So when our 24-hour rapid responders here respond to a victim, whether it's after an op or at a hospital or a police department, some of the things that y'all deal with on the scene in the immediacy, one of the things is drug addiction. And so how does that, I mean, how do you deal with that when, I mean, because the victim obviously, when they're either intoxicated or high, a lot of times they can't make a decision, right? Because they're affected. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I think the first thing that you do is kind of assess what immediately is needed. You know, are we dealing with someone who might be overdosing, or are we dealing with someone who might be starting to detox a little bit? Those have very immediate responses that are required. And so that's a good thing about having medical present during operations. And, you know, we're not talking about rehab at that moment. We're talking about, you know, keeping us out of a crisis.
Okay, and then that also leads into the whole thing about it may be a week or a month or 2 or 3 months. And so how do you follow up, Amanda, when you've got a situation like that? Maybe you've got a victim who appears to you the first time you see them as high or affected by drugs, and then, you know, maybe you reach out to a partner and get a treatment plan as far as the addiction is concerned. How do you move forward with that through that process?
Well, first and foremost, you know, we're having this conversation as far as, you know, meeting your immediate needs first, and then, you know, following up the next day and the next day after that, just for the very basics, and just kind of starting to lay the groundwork for that conversation. And then what do you want to do next? So in the instance that, you know, it's an immediate need as far as a crisis situation, you know, if they refuse any kind of help there, and so we have to wait a few days, I present then usually the plan that I found. Okay, look, here's some options that we have. This is not going to cost you anything. We've got partners that have come alongside us, and we can offer this to you. But first and foremost, it is up to you, because like we've mentioned before, there's so many things that have you know, been taken out of their hands as far as, you know, whether they get to sleep tonight or eat tonight or whatever that might be. They've not had any choices. So I always want them to know this is your choice. And I mean, you know, there's been times where I have said, you know, you've got to be the one that wants this. Nobody else can do this for you. And, you know, the resources there, that this is probably going to be the best opportunity that you've had in a long time. And so, you know, if they're still not ready, then we come back around. I mean, we just kind of keep coming back to that. But in the meantime, you know, what their immediate needs are. Again, still meeting those needs, still building that relationship. And it might be weeks pass or months pass before they're ready to have that conversation. But when they know and they realize that, you know, the choice is theirs, oftentimes they will take that step out to go ahead and be willing to receive the rehab services that are offered.
Okay. And so in talking about that, you brought up partnerships. Casey, what, you know, when we're looking for partners out there who can provide high quality, trauma-informed victim services to the clients that we're bringing to them, what are you looking for when you're an advocate out there and you know that your client needs either a shelter or treatment? What are the things that you're looking for in a partner for that, to serve that client?
Well, one of the things I look for is to see if that agency, that provider, has knowledge about human trafficking victims, because their trauma is complex trauma. It's different than a lot of other different types, and so they need special care and, you know, specialized care for what's going on with them. And so I look to see if people are, you know, actually aware of that. You know, are they trauma informed, but do they have some kind of specialization with that? Do we have other people who've worked with them that have had success stories? Especially if I've sent a client someplace before and they've done really well. You know, I keep that in mind, and there's some rehabs that every client I've sent there has done really well. And so that's going to be at the top of the list of the one I call. to find out if they have, availability, if they have a bed for that person, because I know we've seen success. Sometimes I look at other things too, like, do they have counselors on staff that are going to be meeting with people regularly? Or is it more kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps type program? I look to see, about how long the program is. Because sometimes people like to just do the 30 days and we're done. And I feel like a lot of people in addiction are kind of like, oh, sign me up for the 30 days. But they're not far enough away from it to have the long-lasting success after just 30 days. And sometimes that can be detrimental to them later, because in their mind they're like, oh, well, I tried it, and then I ended up back here, it didn't work. So I tend to try to look for 90-day programs that are longer, so I know the victim can get more stabilized, because we've talked about that already, that when they're first coming out of their trauma experience at the ops and other things, if they've been incarcerated, they're not really stabilized yet. They need that time to stabilize and then get that healing and recovery. And so I look for longer programs. So, and also sometimes if they have either a transitional program or are willing to work with us to, have the shelter as an option for that person when they're done.
Okay, you mentioned transitional housing. So there are a lot of places around the state who have transitional housing programs. What is required for our clients when you're talking about a transitional housing program?
Well, okay.
Yeah, no, whoever wants to jump in. I mean, what are you looking for? What services are you looking for our clients when, somebody just steps forward and says, well, I have a transitional housing program. I mean, have you ever had to piecemeal that and say, okay, well, this agency can provide this, but then I need this, this, and this. Brittany or Keisha, have you ever had to piecemeal a program together because you didn't have, maybe they weren't able to come into the tower, but they were somewhere and then they needed other things?
I think with the follow-ups that we do with the victims, if they're doing their transitional housing, then I'm going to try to make sure that they're doing the therapy and anything else that they need to put the entire program together for them.
And why is that hard, Brittany? Why is that hard for a victim? I mean, why is it hard to not have a one-stop shop, like the tower, for example? I mean, we know obviously the tower provides everything a client needs. And when you've maybe got them in another part of the state when that's not available and they want to stay in that particular area, why is it harder for a victim to do well when you're having to piecemeal their restoration program?
Well, I think when they have multiple needs, we have to figure out how to prioritize what those needs are. So if they can't go to the tower where they would get everything, we find somewhere that meets their top priority, and then we just work down the list.
Okay.
One of the other issues if a program is not all-inclusive is that most of our clients don't have transportation. And so if you have them in a transitional living program, then they have to find a way to get to the work aspect of it. If you're then trying to find a therapist for them, then they have to try to find a way to get to therapy. It puts them very dependent on other people, where, and a lot of programs don't provide all the transportation for everything. And so then they're constantly waiting for rides, constantly late to things, missing things, very unreliable in that sense, and it's hard to maintain that stability.
Which also makes them vulnerable.
Yes.
Which is usually what got them there in the first place. And also, and I know, Brittany, particularly in your area where it's a rural area. So, and you've got somebody, maybe they're staying one place, but a therapist that we think is qualified maybe 30 minutes this way, and somebody else may be 30 minutes this way. So transportation is a huge issue.
Well, I recently had an experience with a client that had just came directly out of rehab into a transitional living facility. And it was actually one that has gone quite well, because this particular facility does have individual therapy. They also take them out for their, if they have a job off-site, they help connect them to work programs. And so they're able to provide that transportation. They also provide them with the group recovery sessions that they go to. So they're able to get them to those locations. So for this particular client to have all of these things, I think that has set them up for success. And they've been able to feel like, okay, I can do this. But it does take a lot of the breath out of them, I guess, the life out of them when they think, okay, I've completed rehab and I'm going to this transitional living. When I get there, I've got a bed, I've got a roof over my head, but I can't get from here to there. And so it really kind of makes them feel defeated before they ever really get started.
And one of the other things I think that I see our clients deal with and suffer from, and particularly in Mississippi, is that there's not a lot of great opportunities for work, right? I mean, and particularly when you're in a rural area, where do y'all see most of your people go to find a job?
Fast food.
Okay, factories, fast food. Most of our clients have a high school diploma?
No.
And what is one of the detriments to that when they start looking for maybe workforce training or something like that? How is that a detriment?
Again, it's that transportation aspect. How are they going to get there? You know, they don't.
And GEDs are required.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of going back to the trauma brain, you know, that's anxiety provoking. And a lot of our clients are intelligent, and but when you put them in that setting, they're not able to meet that standard and to pass that test. Therefore, any employment opportunity that they can seek, that they're capable of doing and learning and doing well, you know, they're held back. It's not available to them.
Yeah, the whole GED requirement is a huge barrier for our clients. And, you know, I always joke about, I don't know if I could pass the thing myself. I mean, it's very difficult, the math portion, and especially if you haven't been in school in a long time or you have any kind of learning disability, or like you talked about, the anxiety. They don't see that as a connection to their continued recovery, because they just don't see that they can get there. I mean, they're seeing the GED and it's so huge and complicated. I got to go back and relearn all this stuff. I just want to learn to paint, or I just want to learn to work on a diesel engine. And then we're like, oh, well, yeah, well, we want you to too, but first you have to study for 6 months to pass the GED. So it really is a wet blanket, I think, on their progress. And just about the time they get there in the Tower program, you know, they're doing well, they're able to function well in public, and then, you know, they're ready and geared up to do something, and then you're like, oh, but you got to go study for your GED. So, you know, it's really a negative for our clients that, you know, there's so many requirements for the GED. So many of our clients also have suffered from a failed mental health experience at some point in their lives. I mean, maybe it was as a kid or maybe as an adult, but Christina, jump into that and talk about the whole mental health experience.
Well, I think that a lot of times, with our clients especially, they've had early childhood trauma. And we have not been very educated, I mean, the mental health field, therapists in general, on trauma and the effects of trauma. So we haven't done a very good job in educating our therapists in our mental health field about trauma. So when there's early childhood trauma, a lot of times our kids are misdiagnosed. I mean, they're given diagnoses of, you know, ADHD or ODD. They're labeled bad kids, and so you know, they might be put on medication for a period of time, and it just snowballs. You know, that becomes their identity, and we have missed the opportunity to treat the trauma and to change the course of you know, their future, because trauma begets trauma. That's what happens. And so by the time our clients are identified, they've likely had a lifetime of trauma, and you know, that isn't easily treated. You can't go to a local regional mental health provider, have a 30-minute appointment, come out with 3 medications, and recover. That's not how it works. And even going to a therapist, if a therapist hasn't been educated thoroughly in complex trauma and the dynamics of human trafficking or the types of abuse that our clients have suffered from, then their treatment too will be ineffective, because they're going to be looking at the symptoms, they're going to be looking at the behaviors only, which is a result of what has happened over their lifetime.
And so I think we see that not only in the mental health field, but throughout. A lot of the whole response effort to victims is, human trafficking is the sexy thing right now, right? Everybody wants to be involved in human trafficking. But a lot of times agencies don't want to take a good long look at themselves and evaluate their programming and really determine, can I really help this person? They just want to be able to stick a stick in the ground and say, we've got human trafficking services. And I think what you talked about before, Casey, about success of victims, if a program isn't evaluating success of their own clients, then, that's a pretty big flashing sign that maybe we don't want to go there, because it really does require heavy evaluation when you're working with these clients. And I know for us, Christina, when we first started out, we changed a lot because we are heavy on evaluation. We want to see what helps our clients. And if what we're doing doesn't help our clients, then we need to do something different. And we do, right?
Absolutely. We are not just trauma informed and evidence based, but we are survivor informed. We are the clients that we serve, the participants in our program, inform what we do. They inform our policies, they inform our program, they inform every aspect of how we proceed, because it's their life and it's their recovery.
Okay, so to kind of wrap everything up, what we wanted to do here today was to just give people a good picture of what happens when a victim is recovered or when we immediately respond to a victim, and just to say that we come to them on an emergent basis with a whole quiver of eras to be able to give them choices and for them to determine what they want to do, and to give them the time that they need. And then it takes a lot of skill from our rapid response advocates to say, okay, well, if you need this, let's go here, or let me recommend this program or that program. And so it's a long haul, and we stay involved with them for a long time, many times for many years, until a survivor is ready to turn loose of us, right? So, and we just want to highlight the wonderful work that our law enforcement partners are doing out there. We're so thankful for them, and it really blesses our hearts when we see law enforcement partners understand the trauma-informed, victim-centered approach, and we're so grateful for that. And thank you for spending this time with us.